Good morning. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. It is February 9th. I guess 2025 blew past me and 2026 is already blowing past me. Um, Feeling pretty good about this episode. I woke up and I didn't do the zombie walk to the kitchen to make a cup of coffee. I actually had a little pep in my step, a little spring. Made myself a cappuccino this morning because I was thinking this one is maybe one of my favorite episodes when I look at what we're going to talk about today. So pour yourself a really good cup of coffee and or sit down and watch it. Turn up your audio, whatever you're doing, we will support however you listen or watch the show. All righty, here we go for today's or this week's episode of Collision Coffee Talk. We're going to talk about what the real National Association for Collision Repair is. That's it. Start pulling off the boxing gloves. I'm tired of all the crap going on, and we're just going to talk about where the industry is and how a lot of people have sold it out over the years for their own personal stages, statuses, and money, and what that really meant to body shops. Had a lot of feedback last week over the little Bodyshop ICE comment, and we talked about some ice damage from the winter storm that had come through. But the comments that came through, I guess, well, I'm going to talk about something else when it has to do with ice. A judge in Oklahoma has ordered State Farm to produce. So we'll talk about what the judge did this week out in Oklahoma and how that's going to affect things going forward. Paint sales are down. We'll talk about that. Last week, we talked about the criminal intent, sort of that criminal narrative that insurers are trying to not just spin toward policyholders, legislatures, et cetera, but they're also spinning to themselves. So we're going to talk about some actual IA arrests, and I'm going to read through those. There's a lot of people that just need some help right now. We're going to even share some of my personal experiences through that arrest. I don't have an arrest record, but there's a lot of people out there in this industry that do. So you should probably Google people before you hire them and see what they've been arrested for. LKQ is on the block. They are up for sale. We'll talk about that. The wage crash coming in 2025. That was a discussion that happened online last week about an argument that broke out between um, people that are on salary or hourly versus technicians being on like a flat rate commission base. And of course, that's always where everybody seems to want to plant their sword or fall on their sword, so to speak. But there's a bigger discussion that we need to have. We're going to talk about what job is next. The I was calling it's like a bloodletting. The crash of 2026 that is upon us. People that are mass amounts of people posting unemployment, shops posting that they're closing, etc. It's off and running. We knew some of it was coming. There was a lot of people that were on like a 6 month sort of a severance package. They hadn't necessarily told people publicly they were unemployed yet. There is some truth to it's easier to find a job when you have a job than when you don't have a job. So there's been a lot of people for the fourth quarter of 25 and coming into 26 that don't have jobs. They just hadn't started talking about it yet. But a lot of that started to finally start getting posted this past week, and so there's just a lot happening. Aztec just can't shut up. Like I don't, I just keep saying it openly. Like whoever is trying to give you PR advice, fire them. It can be an internal employee, it could be an external agency. Just fire them because it goes bad to worse. But we'll talk about what got said this past week. Um, More on AIs and attorneys using artificial intelligence. I just think it's a nice. This is part of the or this is an industry law, practice of law, where IA usage is being really sort of discussed and attempts to regulate it and to do some things. So it's just fun to keep an eye on. And then we're going to talk about the real fraud and claims. Every time I make a post, I have a super fan on Facebook, and every time I post, collision post, whatever, he's quick as an insurance adjuster to jump in there and talk about how writing estimates properly or charging for what you do is inflating expenses for insurance companies. So I've just got a special little post for him. Mm. So they're true. If you are posting and commenting, we do read those. and occasionally we'll make you famous. So let's get into it right away. The number one story, the number one reason probably people are going to listen to this episode is State Farm. So let's just get it out of the way. Um, there was a hearing this past week in Oklahoma on the lawsuit that's going. Now, we've covered this lawsuit in several episodes. There's a couple of factors here. There's the homeowners one that's going on with hail claims right now. And then we do have a couple of body shops out in Oklahoma that have filed because of something we'll talk about a little later as well. So Oklahoma is just who'd have thunk it? Like I just got to be honest. In all the states where I thought really good legal entertainment would pop off, it was not Oklahoma. I mean, you usually see that stuff in California, Texas, Florida, like Oklahoma was not, it was not on my bingo card. But they are doing a fantastic job. So I'm just very excited. But they had a hearing. State Farm's been filing all kinds of motions, motions for dismissal, removal, delay. I mean, just about everything. And it's sort of finally kind of ticking this judge off a lot. So the ruling came out this week about State Farm's delays on producing discovery. And they have been ordered that they have 7 days from the date of that judgment to turn over everything. Now, I don't think they're going to turn over anything. So, I mean, let's just be honest. There is a case for the collision repair industry that the trade magazines followed pretty well. That may have been 2 or 3 years ago out of North Texas, where there were State Farm was continually being compelled to produce the magical survey. And I was there's never going to be able to produce because there isn't a survey. It doesn't exist. Like there's nothing for them to produce. So they stalled and stalled and stalled and then settled so that there was never any discovery in that. State Farm's going to continue to delay. They're going to continue to either, to do everything they can not to produce discovery. So no, I don't expect anything to happen in 7 days, but it is a very interesting deadline. The other thing about that deadline that is also very interesting to me is that outside of the documents, the discovery documents and everything that they're asking for, the judge also told them that they had 30 days to schedule the depositions of some top executives. There's nothing, and I'm sure if I dug a little more, maybe there's a list of specific people they're wanting to depose. You're obviously going to want to depose your VP of claims. You're probably going to want to depose whoever's head of the CAT team when you're thinking about hail claims and roofs. That's the catastrophe team more than almost anybody these days. But just my personal, well, I'm just going to tell you a little story. I think all of you know that Ed Rust retired early. Like he still had time on his tenure as the CEO. Whatever you think of Ed Rust, and so Wade Ebert, a former body shop owner out in Illinois, his father in their shop had a really big, well done trial against State Farm 30 years ago. I can't even remember. Erica Eversman was on that one, and they deposed Ed Rust. I like Ed. Just I mean, like, I always had really good conversations with him, and I was always surprised that no matter how he from the I think from the first year of my employment, at one point I spent like 3 months back to back to back because I went through all the schools together at one time. So I was living at corporate quarters for about 3 months. But I mean, even at that, he would learn your name, and then he always knew your name. So I mean, he would say hello, and he would ask you how things were going, and he would remember what y'all had talked about, and whatever. So I'm really big fan of Ed. So, um, Ed retiring early, in my opinion, was not necessarily his choice. The CEO that took over was a gentleman by the name of Michael Tipsard. Um, and as of late, you'll see a lot of former State Farm executives from corporate posting about how they all had a bad boss they didn't like, who was a bully, who ran around. Maybe Tipsard. But I really, really hope that somebody goes and drags that. So Tipser retired. Maybe it was first of last year. There is a new CEO. Um, I'm really hoping that whoever is the plaintiff's attorneys in Oklahoma, they drag Tipser out of retirement, and he ends up being one of the people that are deposed. That was his thing. I'm gonna put it in quotes. Y- y- that was his version of State Farm. So I really. hope he gets deposed. And I'm just not even ashamed to say it. Like, I think there's a lot of people that would like gather and cheer for the chance for that man to be locked in a room somewhere with a court reporter for 5, 6 days and having just a bunch of questions hammered at him. But you kind of want the documents before and the emails and everything and stuff before you do that. So we're keeping an eye on that one. There was a lot of flurry of text messages going on last week where a lot of people were like, please, in the name of baby Jesus, please depose Tipser. So I'm just gonna throw that one out there. That would be a pretty good one to do. Um, there are certain people that you meet that you look at their style and you go, they're going to do terrible on in a deposition or on a stand or whatever. Larry is one of those people that everybody thinks he's going to go in and go crazy and yell and scream and cuss people out and do whatever. And he gets in a courtroom and he becomes like everybody's favorite altar boy, like super funny, super sweet. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. And juries and everybody falls in love with him. I don't think that would be what would happen for whatever. But we're going to keep an eye on that one. So, like I said, from the date of the order, the magical 7 days, I do not expect anything to get turned over. I believe that they'll be back in court again, or they're going to be on a settlement trip, like we talked about last week, the settlement bonanza. All right, paint sales are down. We're just going to talk about some things that sometimes people miss. Um, when you're looking at earnings and returns. You can get, when a company has lots of different revenue silos, then revenue can be strong because other silos make up for the ones that aren't strongly performing. And then when you narrow down where we're at with the relevant portions to our business, there are patterns that are beginning to emerge. And I think shops, more than anything, manufacturers, insurance companies, you guys need to be paying attention to these patterns that are emerging in our industry. PPG talked about where they ended Q4 final numbers for 2025, and no one is surprised. Refinishing sales, so auto refinishing, is down for pretty much everybody, and that's reflective in the that claims count is down. So claims are down 10% and total losses are up. So we have these, availability of reported claims is going down, and then the availability of repairables within that is going down as well as total losses increase. And so when those two things combine, we're not selling paint, right? We're not painting those cars, they're not getting repaired. And so PPG in their Q4 report sort of breaks out, hey, look, our this department made money because we did better in these silos that technically fall under refinish, but then this one over here isn't doing, has had a downturn. When you look across the downturns that everybody is experiencing, um, those contractions are real. I think everybody, you don't need to be told the industry's down. Everybody's feeling it. But there are some interesting things happening. There's a lot of companies that are going up for sale or looking for buyers right now. It almost feels like the beginning stages of the sinking of the Titanic in some ways. That some people have looked at the numbers, looked at where they're trending, looked at the futures, and decided that if you're going to go, now's the time to go. LKQ actually announced this at the end of last year. I didn't really pay any attention to it. There was a lot of other things going on in December, and the first part of January, even around me to deal with LKQ. But then this past week, LKQ sent out a sales flyer where they're doing wiring harness repair. And for Elite Tech, I was like, well, that's really stupid. So let me take a look at what you got going on over there. So LKQ is announcing another peel off sale. This time they want to explore what they call their specialty segment. That's where Keystone lives. So that's the parts there. Earlier in 2025, they had sold off another segment of their business for $412 million. And what's interesting is they took that money and applied it towards the debt. They wanted to down pay their debt. We talked about debt ratios. when we were talking about Crash Champions and their rating and where they are. If I want to sell, be acquired, whatever, I need to have healthy financial numbers. Same thing for a body shop. Like if you want to, so many shops for so many years did their taxes in a way to show that they weren't making any money, which was, I mean, I always I kind of go back to that. Remember that debate between Trump and Hillary Clinton where she accused him of taking advantage of a tax cut? And he went, well, yeah, I did it because if it's available to me, I'm going to take it. Why do I want to pay taxes? So I don't blame shops for doing that. If you have the ability and a smart accountant, but then if your business has shown no profit, it really makes it almost impossible to it is impossible to sell your business if you don't have profit. Like what am I buying if you're not making any money, or why would I want to buy you if you're not making any money? So they're paying down the debt ratio. When I look at what LKQ is doing, I may not like I mean, I don't like the business decisions they make a lot of times. I mean, I don't like the parts they sell. I damn sure don't like them running around selling aftermarket sensors. I don't like them now wanting to do wiring harness repairs because then that's got me all nervous. I'm thinking, damn, you guys can't even sell me a bumper that fits. And now you want to fix, oh, I don't know, SRS wiring? That just seems like, maybe I'm out. I don't know. Um, but there is no denying that they are good at business. Like they're good at business. They make money. They obviously have people that are very intelligent, helping them make money. So when you look at what they're doing, I have to look at it and go, is this the signaling of a lot more? We we see some of this in the ADAS world as well, where suddenly these companies are wanting to sell, merge. Like it feels like that's sort of at an end, which I'll discuss a little bit later. But LKQ applied what they sold toward their debt. They're now looking at getting rid of their specialty part, so the Keystone line, all of that, getting rid of those businesses. So where are they at? And they're reporting on September 30th, 2025, LKQ had a total debt of $4.2 billion. Is that bad? Turns out it's not that bad for them. So I think everything's relative. Everything's bigger than Texas, even though they're in Tennessee. But so $4.2 billion of debt. How have they been trending? In 23, it was 3.6, 24, 4.1. 25, we're sitting at 4.2 billion in debt. So the debt ratio is climbing. They have applied in the grand scheme of things, $412 million for a company. I think most of us are like, yes, that's the lottery. But that means nothing when you're $4.2 billion in debt. It's like, damn. But when we look at their debt to equity ratio, they're at 61.6%, and that's considered healthy. So as compared to when you look at Crash's debt ratio, it's 9 times earnings or whatever. So basically, for every dollar that LKQ has, they have 60 cents of debt. So they're still considered financially healthy. And we'll see what happens with that side of the business. When you look at are the insurers cutting OE part deals? That's the big debate right now. I mean, did the MSOs teach the insurers that they could cut out? Well, I don't want to say so. The MSOs cut their own deals, right? They cut deals with the OEs, they cut deal with paint companies. They sort of cut out the middleman, went straight to the source, and got really, really good discounts. For a lot of these MSOs, their ability to survive or their ability to make profit is based on how much they're making on those particular channels, the paint, parts, etc. Did they did they give insurers a path to that, or the desire to have a path to that? And then did the Aztec deal and sort of how that played out convince insurers that they can cut out middlemans, they can set rates, they can purchase things without ever having to actually purchase them in a way, and that they get a financial reward for it. If the insurers are in fact making OE parts deals, um, which is in every year you look at the numbers, aftermarket alternative parts have still stayed about 20%. It's kind of astonishing that we can go through all of these years And I can look back at performance reviews from 20 years ago, and alternative parts were about 20% of the average appraisal. Um, so that's a when an insurer looks at it, it's a very small number in the grand scheme of things. And if you can give OE parts, not have to worry about this, not have to have any of the problems that come with, installing alternatives, dealing with legislation around alternatives as, states look at parts and windshields and OEs and kind of all of this stuff that's starting to happen, then is that actually the better long-term play? I wonder, and we discussed this a little bit online last week, if companies like LKQ aren't looking at it and going, hey, I'm not so sure 2, 3 years out, there is an alternative parts market, like outside of rebuilders and customer pay and those kind of things, like not customer pay, but customer self order, go pick up or whatever. Um, but I've been getting a lot of, so if we have to do a paint spray out test or whatever, I don't like doing them on little sheets of tin. I don't think that's a real refinish. So I'll go on Amazon and I'll order 30 aftermarket fenders, and they show up, and I put them on part stands and we do our spray outs, right? Um, that's becoming, I think, for more consumer direct feel. I don't think you have Steve driving up to an LKQ and buying parts and driving home and fixing his car. I think he's online doing that stuff as well. So, um, interesting. A former LKQ employee, Herb, who I love, respect. He, probably 60 years ago, sold his salvage yard to LKQ and worked for them for a very, very long time. He disagrees. He doesn't think that's part of the motive for why they're doing it. And I was like, okay, well, hey, I like it. Your perspective's good because you were there for so long. I'm just looking at all these pieces around the industry moving around. Um, Paint companies peeling off refinish and trying to sell it, and LKQ peeling off parts and trying to get rid of that. And I'm thinking, have we hit an iceberg and maybe all of us aren't necessarily aware of it yet? And some of the bigger companies that have bigger brains, think better about the economy, do all other things, are they starting to think, hey, 26 is our year to either get out or go down? So we're going to be keeping an eye on that one. So when you see those things, I always, we talked about critical thinking being a big skill for 2026. Just ask yourself, what's maybe the deeper reasoning? What's going on here? And don't get so caught up in the numbers. I mean, for all of us in small business, we couldn't think about even making 4 billion, much less being 4 billion in debt. And I can't fathom a company that has that much debt but is still operating. Like I don't get how people finance and refinance debt. That's beyond, like, if I'm in debt, I can't go down to the bank and get a home loan or a car loan. So I'm not really sure where these people keep coming up with all this money. But that's the people that are really good at that. Keep an eye on what they're doing, because they probably are seeing market trends that maybe some of us don't see until it's too late, right? Like I don't want to be on the waterfall edge before I'm trying to figure out how to get out of the barrel before it crashes over. All right, let's talk about asTech spin in the Department of Justice. I think the affliction that affects asTech is they just cannot shut up. Um, and some of that is Kinderhook driven, in a lot of ways. But so this little story popped up. Um, Now, the connection, anytime there's a purchase or a merger, so if asTech and Opus want to merge, the Department of Justice will do an investigation. Doesn't mean they're going to do anything about it, right? And sometimes they may even investigate something and go, we don't like it, but it doesn't violate a law. Um, and so they've been out interviewing a bunch of people in the industry, former employees of both companies, body shops, vendors, other ADAS companies. Like, I haven't seen them interview this many people in a long, long time. And so when that's going on, you should probably be very quiet. Like there's not a spin that you can put out PR wise. But what popped up in this article is you have the CEO of Repairify. Not You're not in a collision, dude, right? Like, but could be very bright. I don't know, needs to stop trying to do interviews. Like you can't PR your way out of this review, and you can't PR your way out of everybody hating you. I want to remind everybody that we had them beg, I mean, in quotes, like I'm not making it up. We begged the industry for forgiveness. This big um, show, play, act that was put on at CIC, but we still haven't seen anything in writing from them, have we? No, we haven't. But so here they are again, right? Trying to spin how this is going to be great. I think this latest round was everybody was really curious about who's buying who and who's going to be in charge. It seems like they wanted to try to make a point about how the Opus CEO is going to be the one that's in charge of this merger when it's over. Um, I, I mean, I think when you look back at the history of Kinderhook, you can't honestly believe that. I mean, there's so many companies that would line up if they weren't an NDA and explain how they have sold with all of these same promises and then after it that none of them came true. But anyway, I thought this paragraph was probably one of the worst paragraphs that ever could ever be written when you consider what the DOJ is specifically investigating right now. Both companies have established significant footholds in the collision repair industry. Okay. When I think collision repair industry, I think body shops, parts, that. Apparently not. asTech has partnerships with major insurers, including Geico, while Opus has agreements with State Farm and Allstate. Okay, so the one thing the DOJ is worried about is that does this create something that is then weaponized by the insurers and becomes like a monopoly? I think, they sort of, the DOJ sort of got it right in the Mitchell CCC merger all those years ago and why they kind of prevented it. You mostly had Solera in there going, hey, they're going to put me out of business. Um, Turns out they did it anyway without merging. But, but, um, that probably could be the worst paragraph ever to come out. So I don't want to say necessarily that with what they presented, this may be some journalistic, um, creativity by the trade magazine that ran this or whatever. But that absolutely is the worst paragraph that could have happened, considering right now. Like a significant foothold in the collision repair industry shouldn't mean that you have deals with insurers. It should mean that body shops have selected and are using your product because it's good, it works, it helps make them money. Like all the reasons other than, well, we have to, we're told to. That's the exact definition of a monopoly in so many ways. And so I am just constantly amazed at when companies can't shut up. And I always joke because, like, when I was insurance and PR, there were sometimes you just didn't respond. It was like you get asked and you go, we have no comment. Um, my job now is to talk. Everybody goes, well, you need to learn to be quiet. I'm like, that's not my business model, right? My business model is running my mouth and talking and making people angry and doing all kinds of things. I'm really, really good at it, right? But in corporate, you have to learn that there are some things you can't PR your way out of, especially if you have no intentions of really of changing your intent. And if I don't have a written, we're 3 weeks out from this. I think we're 3 weeks out from the whole we beg for your forgiveness. Geico was a terrible mistake. We shouldn't have done it. Still nothing in writing. So I don't believe that you have any you are intentional about changing. I love this. Our true north will be, I don't believe that. I just don't. I think it was a simple ask from the industry. And it wasn't just me going put it in writing. There was other people. I think it was a simple ask from the industry that we still didn't get at the end of the day, which brings me to discuss. I've been holding back on this for a while. So we're going to talk about it. There is only one real national body shop association in this industry, and it is not SCRS, it is ASA. For those of you that don't have the long history in this industry, ASA was our central top number one national association for a very, very long time. They were the host and the creators of our national trade show, which was called NACE. It was held in Vegas. For years and years, NACE traveled around the country, and it was a great business model. Like they were in different major cities. I can remember NACE in Dallas because that was close to Arkansas. I remember that was a damn good show. So and then after a while, they decided to take NACE stationary. So they took it to Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and it was always due at the same time as SEMA. So SEMA was at one end of the strip at the Las Vegas Convention Center, and NACE was at the other. They were collaborative shows, meaning that if you had a ticket or you had registered for NACE, you could go down to SEMA. It was very hard to get down there. It's because there was so much going on. Um, Over the years, at the end of the whole, I guess if we approach the end of life cycle with NACE, as with anything, when you become so dependent on sponsorship dollars, those sponsors will change your focus. And that the MSO symposium was a development of NACE. It was not a development of SEMA. So you see it meet there now, but that came out, and a lot of people were a little frustrated that it seemed like NACE ASA was allowing a little bit too much focus on these MSOs. Um, the MSOs were getting their own special events that other shops couldn't get into. There were parties, things that like the average Joe Schmo that showed up, the ones that were paying memberships, um, felt like that was sort of fading away. At the same time, SCRS decides that they just want to do their own show, financially driven or thought driven. I don't know. Back then when it happened, I didn't necessarily care a lot. I wasn't really excited about the MSO symposium and sort of all of that. I remember the first MSO symposium, the people that were running the trade show, so it was an independent party, an events and planning company. I remember standing there out front and kind of uh, giving them a hard time about, I'm like, look at this floor. At the time, the NACE floor was full. There's lots of people running around. Like, this floor is full of independents who spent their hard-earned money and taken time away from their businesses to come to this show. And you are giving more events and time and space and energy and attention to MSOs that aren't paying to come here and people out of their own pocket or whatever. So like I didn't care. I will say at NACE, being at Mandalay Bay, we had launched a program called Tools for Success with, it was a partnership with the Girl Scouts of America. And we would invite girls, you could get your automotive badge, but we would invite Girl Scouts to come to the NACE trade show floor. And the first year we did it, we had 100 Girl Scouts show up. And it was some of the top women in the industry where they would do panel discussions and talk about, girls could ask questions about getting jobs and careers. When NACE was overtaken, and we were at SEMA refused. So SEMA has a policy that says if you're not 16 or older, you can't be on the show floor. And so we weren't allowed to continue with the Girls for Success or Tools for Success program with the Girl Scouts. And that program was so fun and it was so great. You would have these, just imagine 100 Girl Scouts ranging from, teenagers to middle school to are walking around a trade show floor, and they would take them to booths. We had different women that were hosting them, and they would take them to booths, and they would get like a female executive would meet them, explain their company and what they do and what the available job opportunities were. Honestly, one of my favorite things ever. Like if I had to pick a top 5 things of Collision Hub's ever done, the Tools for Success program with Girl Scouts is probably going to be number one. I really love that. I hated when it went away. I understood SEMA's position, that had always been their rule not to have children on the floor. I'm like, why not? Right? What could happen? So when you think about how expensive some of those cars are that are there. But anyway, so we ended up with sort of this cataclysmic shift in the industry. And then ASA went through a lot of drama themselves between their executive directors and some other things. And I think right now across the industry, probably 99% of body shops have sort of forgotten about ASA and what it does. But here's why I want to redirect you. I don't think we can afford to have split allegiances anymore. I don't, and that means lots of things. It does, I don't think we can afford to have um, 2 national associations. I don't think we can afford to have national meetings anymore like CIC because it dilutes available resources. You have companies that are trying to sponsor the CIC event. You have companies that are trying to sponsor an SCRS membership. You have them trying to sponsor all these different things. We need a consolidation of resources. We're in like, you know, stage 4 survival right now. Like there's a lot happening. And there are some resources that ASA has that makes them unique specifically for us. And so I'm kind of going to start begging everybody in the industry to sort of take a return. If your association is requiring your dollars, like your state association, if they're requiring your money to go to a national association, you need to be very involved right now on where Your money has the opportunity to help you or do nothing for you. You get to decide where it goes. So you need to have some very specific questions. If you haven't been on the ASA website or you're not familiar with them, the Automotive Service Association is a national association that's just for automotive. So there's mechanics in there, there's diagnostic technicians in there, and there's collision repair shops in there. And if we go back 20 something years, most everybody in the industry was very, very involved with ASA. Some of the most beneficial documents that we've ever been able to use, I know Larry in court and whatever, came from ASA. So ASA put together the original blend study, as I like to call it, like 25 years ago. So they do a lot. They also have all of the extras. So they've got the healthcare plans, they've got the investments. The one thing I like about their healthcare plan, when you do group plans, so if an association gets itself as a status and it helps members do group healthcare buying or whatever, the size of the pool matters. And ASA having mechanics in there as well, which is really where the largest portion of their budget comes from. Um, they just get really good rates. So if you want health insurance, if you want whatever, ASA has that for you as well. But I want to talk about what they really do that matters right now. You absolutely must have legislative help. Your state association needs to be focused on legislation. Your national association needs to be focused on legislation and protection. Um, there is no other independent association out there that represents collision repairs that has representation in Washington, D.C., other than ASA. So ASA has a full-time lobbyist. He has an office in Washington, D.C. He has relationships with the senators, with the reps, with the lobbyists, with the PACs, with all of those things. When there is an issue or something that has to do with the automotive, there are two places senators go. Number one, the NADA Association, because those dealers have money and they support campaigns. And then number two would be ASA, right? Because that's your independent mechanical. I mean, I always say that is true ASA, and I think that was used against them that there's so many members are mechanicals. But when people think about car repair, they don't think about collision. They usually zero in and focus on mechanical, and so that's where a lot of that goes. And it's great to have someone there that also has a group of shop owners. So there's a collision board of directors at ASA. It's a group of shop owners. It's not paint companies. They're not on the board. Um, it's not other like ADAS companies. It's shop owners on their board. They Bob, who is their lobbyist, gets input from body shops. And when something comes up, he calls a meeting of the board and goes over it with them, and they get to talk through and tell him what their concerns are. Um, Education on legislative is very, very important. ASA has the Take the Hill Day. They have a lot of things that every body shop needs to get involved with. Like you're gonna have to. There's no sitting in your desk anymore and hoping that somebody's doing something for you. You've really got to do this for yourself. Um, Pretty much every industry that touches collision repair, whether that's the insurers, whether it's parts, whether it's paint manufacturers, they all have their own independent lobbyist and they are at the federal and state level. Collision repairs do not. Um, ASA does a really good job of monitoring any bill that comes to the floor for every state because it does it or does it not have impact on automotive repair businesses. And that doesn't necessarily mean like so they have a national federal lobbyist. They don't have really a whole lot of like local, but they can help get within different states to activate the mechanical shops and the body shops and everybody else to say, hey, this bill, you need to go get in on it. You need to be on that email list. That's what I tell everybody. Um, the other association isn't watching all that for you. They'll have an opinion when something happens, sure, but they're not actively monitoring and being defensive. That's a budget. Like a lobbyist and a legal department to support a lobbyist is hyper expensive. Um, Probably not doable for just collision repair shops. When you think about, it probably has to be combined with somebody to be there. Um, And then, so they worked, just as an example, ASA was hyper involved when the Dodd-Frank Legislation Act came out in 2010, and that was to create federal oversight of insurance. And as you can imagine, the insurance companies did not want that. They wanted the state level regulation. So they don't want a one ruling to do it all. If you think about banking, most banking and financial products fall up under federal. They're not individually um, state governed. There's a reason why the insurers didn't want a federal Department of Insurance. Uh, but anyway, so they were involved, and there is now a federal insurance office. There's still some debate. They fall under the U.S. Treasury on what they can actually do. There is a bill right now that's floating around that would sort of dissolve this and really kind of always and forever make it a state level thing. And so there's a lot of people really working to try to change that. I think some of what you're seeing happening out in Oklahoma and some other things are going to be really beneficial to that. But um, just know that there's a reason why we've got to really do things differently. Like we've just really got to, as shops, and I'm gonna say not just the shops, but 3M and PPG and all of, all of, if you sell anything to collision repair shops, if you derive revenue because body shops buy something, you need to be hyper concerned about what's going on. If shops close, we're anticipating a 30% closure rate this year. There's less people for you to sell your to. And then you've given the MSOs such discounts, you're not really making any profits off of that. So instead of sponsoring a coffee break to a stupid meeting full of people that are just there to play golf, give that money somewhere where it can be turned into legislative and lobbying and the things that shops need. It's a really good article. So go back to Chip Marlin if you want to. It's talking about how the insurance lobby has begun to hijack laws. If we look at the towing and storage bill in Oklahoma, if we look at what's going on out in California, if you look at some of the changes recently down in Florida, that through no shame has directly been because of Geico's efforts. Um, how is the insurance lobby just really hijacking it and sort of screwing consumers over? This is a great article. It focuses on Oklahoma. There are two senators in Oklahoma that sponsored the salvage towing and salvage bill that we talked about at length. And then they've also put a bill forward that would remove interest penalties on insurers after judgments are against them. Um, and basically, these two senators, one is an insurance agent and sells insurance for farmers, and the other is an insurance company. They're a risk mitigation company for insurance companies. So um, obviously, anybody can run for office. And for you and I to run, probably nobody's going to support our campaign, right? When these insurance people run for offices within states, there's a lot of PAC money available for them for their campaigns. And so there's some things like I talked about it one time. I don't think I should be able, there should probably be a law that says you can't put forth bills that directly financially impact your chosen profession. So because these guys were senators, or because these guys are in insurance, they probably shouldn't be able to present any bills that have insurance. Now they can convince other people to present the bills. They can vote for them when they come up. I can't stop them from that, but I probably should be able to stop people from writing and introducing legislation that has a direct benefit to them or their PAC people. But we would be here for the next 27 years if we wanted to talk about legislative reform. But this is real. The insurers are smart. They've stuck with state regulation of insurance. They fought it at the federal level, and now they're on the state level, working in the background, getting people to put up bills that directly not only impact you as collision repairers, but impact other people that deal with insurance companies. And if laws continue to impact your ability to do your job and get paid for it, then a lot of us won't be around to do our job and get paid for it very much longer. And I think the companies in this industry, it's great that you guys want to sponsor. And I get that when I talk to a lot of you, you tell me that, well, you feel sort of guilty, like you have to support something for body shops. So you give money to this association and that association. I totally get that. I'm just asking you that if you really care, if you really want to see a difference, if we want to save as many shops as we possibly can for 2026, I need you to go put that money at a place right now that can make the most difference. And to do that, I need a lobbyist that actually knows this game. And we only have one association that has one of those. And so that's ASA. We need them to come back, and we need ASA to be super strong in collision again, and allow Bob and his team in Washington, D.C. to do the work that we need to do. But also, that legislative watch helps us when something's being snuck in. Like if we can get on something early before it's already being voted on the floor, then we have some opportunities to make some better differences. So I'm asking you all to please consider, just even if it's just a membership to ASA, but please consider focusing your sponsorship dollars, your membership dollars, and everything there right now and getting involved. You don't have to just give money. You can get involved in committees. You can do a whole lot of things. Um, Dan Stander, who's a body shop owner out in Colorado, is the chairman of collision repair for ASA. And so I know he'd love to talk to you about you and tell you even more. All right, so I made a post last week about ice, body shops and ice, and it was about the ice storm and all the claims that would be coming in, and everybody was making comments, whether it was on the podcast audio version or on the video version, that was not where we thought you were going with an ice comment. And then I thought, oh well, I'll just go there, right? So if I let you down and disappointed you, but so this story came out this week. Actually came out last week. Um, it's not uncommon. I'll just say that we have received several calls where collision repair shops, automotive shops, are being visited by ICE. Um, Come on. I mean, like so many people online going, well, if you don't, you shouldn't employ them if they weren't legal. And I go, you are the same people that 5 years ago were asking me if I would produce iCar documents in Spanish. Like you knew your technicians, like you wanted me to remake iCar in Spanish. We asked, I mean, it was probably 10 years ago, you guys were asking associations to create, and I think CIC did it, a dictionary of collision repair terms in Spanish. And like I know 3M we were making all sorts of training videos in different languages, which they're a global company, so they need to make those in languages. But we had paint companies coming in and asking if we could make the sort of the certification warranty training for painters available in Spanish so that the shops could get their painters certified for whatever. It's like, okay, you don't get to be both, people. You just don't. You don't get to um privately, or not even privately, but very publicly through your associations, asking for training in multiple languages and then act like, oh my God, I can't believe ICE is coming to body shops. This is in Utah. So I think a lot of people would think, oh, maybe that's California, Texas, Florida, whatever. But so this was ICE going to a body shop in Utah. You can go watch the video if you would like to. They really knocked out the glass in the front door of the body. The body shop locked the door. They knocked through the glass, walked in, took two people out. So this is a really real thing happening. It's probably happening more than a lot of you or I would like to admit. I guess we can't be surprised because of everybody that was asking for so many things in a variety of languages. But because it's real, it's probably about a month ago. On the right, you'll see a video. It's a short that's on YouTube, and that's Wendy Kroll. Wendy Kroll has a company called Essential HR. She's in California, former State Farmer, by the way. She was an HR at State Farm. Her company sort of specializes in collision repair shop human resources. So that's like her niche. It's what she knows. In the video we posted a month ago, she told a story of a company that called her because they had a disgruntled employee that had been fired and then called ICE on the shop, and ICE was coming, and the shop's like, what do I do? It's not uncommon for, I think, for years, the way we've done business in the collision repair industry does not follow the rules of human resources or federal law. Like, we're not good at those either. Like, you'll ask a shop, so did you fill out the I-9 form? And they're like, what's that? I don't know. He came and asked for a job. I told him to show up Friday with his toolbox and, whatever. It's going to become very, very important that you actually understand human resources law, federal law of employment, all of these kind of things. So Wendy put together it's a long course. It's sort of a crash course in human resources. That's available on our website. And then every other week or so, she's recording little tip videos, and we're putting them out on social media, TikTok, Reels, Stories, Shorts on YouTube, etc. You can get some HR feedback from Wendy, but she does have a package that she sort of put together that helps shops think through what will I do if ICE shows up. So if you haven't thought through that as a shop owner, you probably need to think through that. And she's got a package, and she can work and help get people all the paperwork they need very quickly to make sure that if you somebody shows up, knocks on your door, don't lock it. Apparently they'll kick it in. Um, but what you need to have and what different people need to have. She's great. I always tell people, if you can handle HR at State Farm, you can probably handle anywhere. Some of the craziest things that I've ever had to deal with in my life were with my employees at State Farm and me getting called into the human resources department. Um, but that was probably because it was catastrophe. And so we're traveling all over the country, and people are living in hotels and acting like they've never been anywhere. I'm like, you're grown. You're grown men. Why are you out? Whatever. People losing cars at bars. Mm, all kinds of fun things happened. Speaking of not fun things, let's just go ahead and talk about it. So the discussion broke out this week online. The eternal fight. It's almost like there's the eternal fight of body men versus painters. And then there's the eternal fight of flat rate commission guys versus the people that want to be salary or hourly. Um, I can tell you all the reasons why for the last several years we've told people you're going to need to switch the way you pay your people. It's either going to come by force of economy, or it's going to come by force of legislation, or you're like out in you look out in like California and some other places. But here's what's happening that I think everybody needs to pay attention to. The wage crash at the end of 2025 was real. It's the reason it got so much press, not just by us, but you did have insurers start saying we've redone the market, and we think you're getting $10 an hour too much, or $5 an hour too much, or whatever it is. And you've seen this, like, the ceiling of rates is falling. The floor is coming up. In other words, it's getting more and more expensive to operate your business, whether that's just your electricity and your insurance and employee benefits and all of these things. It's just getting your floors rising and your ceiling shrinking. And that's a scary thing. Well, what does that happen? When we look back at lots of different industries, lots of different trades, this isn't collision repair is not special. I know your mama told you were special. She lied. Collision repair isn't special. It's a labor based it's a physical labor based industry in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of them. But here's what happens. We've been in this boom phase where the technician sort of is in control. We've had this illusion, I've called it very frankly and clearly, going all the way back to a Verifax conference where I got ran off the stage because I told people we don't have a technician shortage. That's not our problem. We don't need to be talking about it. And that was like 10 years ago. Mark Olson, I know you're listening. If you can remember that Verifax symposium where I pissed everybody off, what year it was, let me know. Um, but but we've been in this boom phase where everybody's been trying to attract and retain technicians. Specifically, it started really heavily in COVID because we had all this work for some reason. Everybody was like, where'd all these cars and claims and all this stuff come from? So there was the attract the talent. And most phases when you're attracting, sort of like football, right? College football. When you want to attract talent, you pay for it. And so the wage expectations, that's where we started having estimators think that they're six-figure a year salaries or whatever. When you have a boom phase and there is a high amount of labor demand and there's not necessarily enough good people to fill the job, then there's going to be high wages. And that's where we were up until around the middle of 2025. Attracting talent was going to cost you a whole lot of money. And technicians feel like you pay me what I think I'm worth, or I'm just going to go over here and get another job. And a lot of people were doing that. They would jump for whatever they were promised. $2 more an hour, we'll give you a $10,000 sign-on bonus, whatever it was. But now here's where we are. The insurers have suppressed the ceiling, right? They're driving it down, but the economy is driving the floor up, and we're seeing closures. Body shops are closing. We do believe that you'll even see MSOs reduce footprint this year as well, for some of the labor issues, some profitability issues as well. What that's doing is it's starting to free up. You see people posting now that, hey, I'm a tech and I'm looking for a job, or I'm an estimator, I'm looking for a job. That didn't exist 2 years ago. I mean, basically you had a pulse. There was somebody that needed to hire you. Different companies, including, Mike Anderson's Collision Advice has done some surveys, and people are reporting they don't have job openings right now. I have more shops within January contacting me about layoffs. They can't make payroll, and they're starting to start to lay people off. Well, what that's going to do is create this surplus pool of available skill, and then we still have this shrinking demand. We have less claims available. We have more total losses. We have this whole kind of contraction happening. And when we do that, wages will go low. Um, and that's just simple math. If an insurer is going to pay me $10 less an hour, I can't keep paying my technician $28 to $29 a flat rate hour. I can't, right? At that point, they've rolled that back to where the shop may be only making 20% at that part. I can't keep the doors open for that. So we're going to see that in 2026. We're going to see more of this as this plays out, and more shops close or downsize, and there's more availability. What that actually starts doing to pay and pay scales. The the flat rate commission guys, you're basically agreeing to live off the estimate. And as that can, I mean, that's being contracted, and insurers are writing back with change requests. And some of those change requests come back after the car is delivered. And I've had shops reporting negative supplements means that they negative a text paycheck 2 weeks later. So you got paid, you cashed it, you went to the bar, you bought a boat, you did whatever, and then 2 weeks later you get a negative that you weren't expecting on your paycheck, and now you don't have that money, and that's starting to happen, and it's being very uncomfortable, with a lot that's going on. So, techs, estimators, everybody, um, we're not all safe. I think for a lot of times, we've had people sort of boast that, well, I'm a technician, I'm an A tech, I'm recession proof, or I'm always going to be in demand. That's just probably not the case, and we're going to see that play out a little bit more this year, and it's something to keep an eye on for how it's happening. And then you have a lot of shops that are going to come and sit down with their technicians and ask about, hey, let's talk about how we go more to an hourly salary model so that you have a fixed operational cost, where it's not, I have no idea what I'm going to make this month, and I have no idea what I'm going to spend this month either. Having some fixed costs allow for some budgeting and allows for some planning. And shops are starting to learn that. There's a reason why some of your most successful businesses aren't on commission, right? Like why people are making salaries. It'll be, I don't want to say interesting because that's not really the right word. Um, we're just gonna have to keep an eye on it. It's gonna be an interesting. And I say it again. I say interesting. It's just, it's a lot. I don't think it's. I don't think our technicians and employees are really quite aware of where we're at right now, and they sort of have this false sense of security and like they're in charge. And if I don't get what I want, then I'll just quit. And I'm thinking, where are you gonna go? I mean, I get it, but where are you gonna go? So we'll see. We'll see. But keep an eye on that. All right. This is an interesting case because we've been talking about it for a while. Particularly in our industry. Um, we all know now that insurance companies aren't reviewing estimates. You guys are uploading through their portals, and AI is reviewing your estimates, making change requests, producing reports, sending shit back to you. And that's what is the cost of that? Florida is exploring a law that's going to make a human have to do it. We've had the courts in federal court basically said no document can be submitted with AI. Other states are starting to do that. This one happened here in Arkansas. It was an attorney who wrote her case, and she filed she filed a brief, um, and she wrote it with Microsoft Copilot. The only problem is that the cases that it cited. So here's my position. Here's my pleading. Here's what I think should happen, and then here's the cases to support my argument. Yeah, those cases didn't exist. Um, the using the AI to structure the argument wasn't necessarily the bad thing. She should have fact checked whatever, or and then whatever cases it served up, were they even relevant? Like, were they Arkansas cases or whatever? I'm not going to quote New York or California in an Arkansas thing. So anyway, she got reported. The Arkansas Supreme Court, which in most states, the state Supreme Court oversees attorney licensing. and also any claims of practicing law without a license will typically go through there. So, and she had to admit what she did, and she um, resigned. I read through it. I didn't, she resigned from her law firm. I don't think they necessarily asked her to give up her law license. It just said she resigned, is the way it, so it doesn't say like she forfeited her license for a period of X years or whatever. Um, but there's more and more of this happening, and I see shops all the time will send me emails and say, I threw this in Chat GPT and it wrote me this letter. What do you think? And I'm thinking, okay, fact check it. Think about what you're saying in a lot of ways. And for the insurers, you're potentially are saying no to things that you owe. Same thing, same thing. You're in essence using AI to tell you what the answer should be, but the facts that it uses to give you the answer may be incorrect. So you've got to start fact checking what comes through, and the people you've put in charge, the adjusters right now that get this report that spits out, aren't competent enough. Not their fault. You're calling adjuster stupid. Yeah, sort of I am. It's not their fault, right? Um, they just weren't trained. Like if you put me on a call center hotline to talk to heart surgeons, I will be no help whatsoever. I know nothing about heart surgery, right? I drink whiskey and smoke cigars. Like I shouldn't be talking about heart health at all, right? But that's sort of what we've done. We've hired these people and we've put them on a call line, and they don't have any training. So there's no real human intelligence sort of looking at what the AI is spitting out on that side. It's going to continue to evolve. We're going to see more and more cases as AI just becomes more prevalent. Everybody goes, "Well, you're anti-AI." I'm not anti-AI. I use it a lot. Um, for a lot of different things. I use Microsoft Copilot. After I write something, I tell Copilot to clean it up and make it friendlier or expand on some things. Like there's great uses for it. I think there's great uses for it in collision repair, specifically. Um, I think we could use AI to do better procedure research. We can use AI for a lot of things, but there still has to be an intelligent human that goes, I don't think that's right, or maybe I should check the facts or whatever. Remember, AI is not thinking. Everybody goes, AI, thinks about it and gives me the answer. AI is not thinking. AI is organizing a lot of different data from a lot of different places and summarizing it and serving it up for you. So it only gets to serve to you what it has. And if what's been put in it is wrong, then that's what it's going to serve up to you, which is why most AI estimating is trash right now. The thought process, cool. How it works, cool. Um, but what it serves up is not quite there. I got several questions. I saw several posts over the last week, people posting they were closing their body shop forever, and would be them and their wives would be looking for new jobs. Technicians, people posting that they wanted to leave the industry. Where did they go? What? Hey, for those of you that have left, what did you end up doing? Um, I think sometimes there's a little easier for technicians because you're so used to working with your hands that there's a lot of different fields you can go into. It's the people in the front office sometimes that have been lifetime estimators. I always like to tell people if we go back to like 2010 and 11, that was when one of the first waves of adjuster layoffs happened, when you would see State Farm's laying off 4,000 or whatever. And a ton of those people went to work for body shops and have been there since 2010 or so. Um, they don't really have a lot of skill sets. So you were an adjuster writing estimates, and then you went to a body shop and wrote estimates, and that's kind of like the only thing that you know to do. For a lot of us, we're over 50 and we're having to face this. So I just wanted to share Career One Stop is a federal resource where you can go in there and they even have like, so you're over 50, like here's some potential careers. They'll give you assessments on different things that you could learn or go into. Some of this is paid training. So for some of these career opportunities, they will give you up to $40,000 to live and train so that you can become proficient in another job. If you're struggling, if you're, in one of these layoffs that have just recently happened, and you're, where do I find a job in this industry? And the truth is that they're going to be very thin. Even if you were, there's so many executives that had reached certain status with like paint companies and MSOs and some others, and there's that thinning of that middle management herd. It is very, very hard for those people to transition. I always tell people when I was talking to adjusters, people would come to me and go, "I want to get into management." I go, "Do you?" Because because that middle-ish management is always the first one that goes. Like I need people on the streets doing X, and then I need executive level within, that C-suite, but that middle, that's you're like a target at that point. So some of those people, it's going to be very, very hard to transition. And so this is a great resource. I sent it to one guy this past week, and he's like, "There's some things I didn't even know existed as careers that I think I could do, and I might even like." And I was like, "Cool." Um, I'm one of those people. This is all I've done my entire life, right? My I was born into the body shop. I went body shop to insurance, and I never, well, I don't want to say never. I worked in public relations for a while. Um, and in marketing consulting. But for my career is here. If it ended, I don't. I do know my plan right now is they're building a Bucky's one exit down for me. And I found out that I can make $220,000 a year as an assistant manager at Bucky's. I can make close to like $100,000 a year in food services for Bucky's, which means you work in that little thing where they're making the brisket sandwiches, and then you have to yell hot brisket on the board. And I believe that my very loud voice is perfect for the Bucky's job. And honestly, I think I would have a good time. Like all I had to do was just scream hot brisket on the board and like make sandwiches all day long for like close to six figures. So that's I was at Bucky's last weekend because that's my Achilles heel. I cannot go in and out of a Bucky's, without, like, watch this camera work, without spending at least a couple $100. So maybe there's an employee discount too. That would really help my wallet as well. But that would be my plan. Or I'd be like a Walmart greeter. I think that would be cool, just to stand there and go, "Do you need a basket?" Like I could do that. I'd just talk to people randomly for hours. Um, but a great website. So that's something the government's put together. There's going to be another, the federal government's going to look at a bunch of layoffs here recently. And we saw where, like, was it UPS is going to lay off like 40 something thousand people. Like there's going to be a flood of people in the job market. And so it's not going to be, I'm just going to go apply for another job. That's what I do. We may have to, some people may be having to find new careers. So we're happy to help. All right, let's talk about AIs getting arrested. I want to spend some more time on this one because I probably last week got close to being arrested. No, not really, but there's a story there. Um, I often joke. Okay. We talked about in last week's episode about this criminal narrative that the insurers are selling, and they're filing lawsuits against shops. They're filing complaints. They're going to the DMVs. They're going to wherever they can, the bar in California, and they're trying to do everything to paint a picture of shops being negative and criminal and bad, to the extent where we have claims managers that are copying and pasting legal documents and sending them to customers and going, "You sure you want to have your car fixed at this place?" And that's frustrating. But what was interesting is I did have several people send sidebar emails and go, "Oh, hey, so and so got arrested." And we're talking about prominent, well known IAs within the industry that haven't necessarily shared it. Well, the good news is that you can Google and find everybody's mugshots, but I'm not going to show everybody's mugshot. But what I did want to talk about is, so at the end of 2025, one particular adjuster, or IA that's well known in our industry, was arrested on acting as an adjuster and acting without a license. So it was not practicing. When originally I got this sent to me, it was, hey, practicing law without a license, which is a completely different thing. This was charges about acting as an agent, or an adjuster without having those licenses to do that. And so why I want to talk about that a lot. We have a ton of people that have decided, some of them after they've sold their body shops or their body shops were financially struggling and they've started this as another career. We did an adjuster school and I charged a lot for it. So, and we brought people in, and my whole intent was, okay, if you're going to do this, if y'all people suddenly are going to wake up today and decide that you want to do PRIs, you want to do ACVs, you want to do right to appraisals, you want to do all that, I at least want to explain to you the pitfalls and the legalities around what you can and can't do. I've been doing this for 30 something years, and I still find myself getting trapped in them. I'm working on one right now where it takes everything, every ounce of my being, not to say the things I want to say because that's not my role. Like I can't. So everybody goes, "Can you control your mouth?" No, I can when I have to. Really good at it. So I want to talk about this one. So this is not the most recent case. This is a case from 2021 out of the Department of Insurance in North Carolina. But I think it actively reflects what I see a lot of different people doing. So in some cases, to perform right to appraisals, there's nothing that says you have to be licensed. It just says you have to be a competent appraiser. In some states, they've gone and said, hey, you're going to have to be licensed to do right to appraisals. And so we've had this flood of people. Getting licensed just basically means you fill out a form and pay your 25 bucks. There's nothing crazy to being a licensed adjuster in most states. So a lot of people run and they get their licenses in a lot of different states so they can, and they call body shops and go, oh, I can do RTAs or ACVs or DVs and, anywhere in the country. But you forget about the law. So I thought this one was really great because this was actually a settlement. It would have been a conviction, but this particular IA decided to take a settlement. And it sort of lists out what happened here. So we had an adjuster. We had a gentleman that was working with body shops, doing those typical right to appraisals, umpires, et cetera, which everything's kind of going to umpire these days, it feels. And violated part of a rule. So it sort of breaks it down here. So North Carolina statute says that every licensed motor vehicle damage appraiser shall refrain from disparaging the professional reputation of a motor vehicle damage appraiser or other persons associated with the claim. This one's difficult for a lot of people. And I think sometimes, particularly for people that have been body shop people, what does that mean? Like, when you send people an email and you ask them, "Are you stupid or dumb?" and you can't read procedures or whatever, that's disparaging. I've had a couple lately where there's some specific questions I have to ask, and I get some smart ass responses, and like the old claims manager in me wants to bark back, but I can't. And I have to go, okay, and I have to get the customer on the phone, and I have to say, hey, here's where I'm at. I'm dead in the water. You can ask the insurer. I can't. I recently had to go through sort of a hey, um, let's define bias. Like I'm cool with it. Either I'm out, somebody's out, they're out. If we're gonna, let's just put all our cards on the table and make sure that we're all in agreement that everybody's good so that we don't move forward and get some people in trouble. And probably through the process of doing that, there was a little overstep there, but I'm not licensed, so it doesn't matter. And people ask me, Kristen, why won't you get licensed? Because there's problems when you're licensed. I'm not going there. But mm, I live in a state that doesn't even have licensing, so that's pretty. So anyway, you can't do that. I can't. There's times I get stuff from people, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, you don't know what you're doing, but you got to be careful. Okay. What had happened? So the DOI alleged that in an email exchange between another motor vehicle damage appraiser who had appraised the vehicle at issue, copying the insurance company and appraiser involved in a claim. So you copy everybody under the sun on your email. And also copying, they went a little too far. They copied some state representatives and some employees of the Department of Insurance. I will be transparent. I did that once, like probably not too long after I had stepped out of insurance and had collision hub that one insurance company really screwing over customer made me really mad. And so I put on my manager hat and I was like blasting and then yeah, I can't do that. I it just lose the temper. And they were wrong in every sense of the way, but it wasn't my thing. It wasn't me to call it out. And so that was a really interesting, like, all right, I gotta figure out, I gotta get a little bit, I gotta take that hat off and do some things. Anyway, so sending an email back that basically said, "Who's the we?" And so I get this all the time. Like right now, you have insurance companies interfering a lot through the appraisal process. That's basically, this was Progressive. So Progressive in 2021 was doing the same stuff Progressive in 2026 is doing, where there's a lot of interference, oversight, feels like they're directing their IA at what they can and can't do, and we don't have two independent, unbiased parties settling the loss. But you can see here, he sends this email, and here's what the contentions of the email say. I understand what the appraiser was trying to state. Hey, you shouldn't have copied. This basically, you and I. We're the ones that are supposed to do this and not be biased. Um, the insurer did a gotcha, basically went to the DOI, and by including all those people and being telling this person they don't know what they're doing, that's the disparagement, disparaging the professional reputation of a motor vehicle appraiser. Um, and you can see that their ruling is that the email violated the rule, which subjects his license to potential disciplinary action under X. Um, so it's real. It's not like a new thing, although it's picked up a little bit of hype or more activity. There are insurers working really, really hard to find legal problems with IAs. I am I've been for the last 16 years. The Department of Insurance gets insurance companies, corporate offices that calls them and they go, she's not an insurance adjuster. And then they call the Attorney General and the Attorney General's like, I can't do anything either. Um, so I go through it on a regular basis. If you are an IA and you have start to handle a lot of RTAs, a lot of DVs, whatever, you're going to go through this as well. Um, you can have an opinion. You can pick up the phone and call me or Mark Olson or whatever and go, just let it out, but you can't send that in an email. And you'll get frustrated. I totally get it. Like you'll feel like the customer is just being railroaded, and in truth, you're probably the only person that really knows what's happening and how bad it is, and it's frustrating. But just be careful, especially if you carry a license. If you've gone and gotten a license in whatever state you operate in, or in other states, you need to go read all the regulations. You need to look at cases like, so Department of Insurance cases are public record. What's going on? What are they using? What's happening? Like, so you don't fall in this. I think this one ended with like a $500 fine. Um, so, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you could be guilty and it's not like end of the world jail time, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. But it does prevent you from probably doing a lot of work. Um, it'll hurt in a lot of different other ways when customers Google you or whatever. So just be very, very careful. But it was interesting to know that people immediately after last Monday's coffee talk started sending me emails. Oh, here's where so and so got arrested for this, and practicing law without a license, or violation of your adjuster's license, or all the different things. So be very, very careful. As an appraiser, I can appraise the loss, right? Like here are the rules. There are other appraisers that the insurance companies hire that I don't like them. I don't like what they do. They spend a lot of time trying to insult me through the emails. They say a lot of things that I go, well, and sometimes my response is, that isn't nice. I don't get to yell back at them. Or I can sometimes say, it feels like you're frustrated. Like, I mean, like, but I can't say those things. I end up walking across that, whatever state you're in, walking across those lines, and it's not my role to make it harder for the customer to get paid or to make it personal so that things get elongated. Um, so that's the hard part. If you are an IA, if somebody talked you into getting into this damn business, God forbid you bought a franchise, but if somebody talked you into doing this, and you're out doing RTAs, DVs, ACVs, any of that, and you have not had adjuster training, like you haven't had a basic claim school, you haven't been trained on your laws in your state. If you don't know any of that, please immediately get some training, because the insurers are directly focused on anyone doing appraisal work in connections with body shops. So if the insurer feels like your work is always coming from one particular body shop, they are going to turn their targets on you. So you need to make sure your house is clean, before you invite somebody over for dinner. My mama used to say, make sure your house is clean. Well, let's talk about real fraud. So this is from my buddy Gary, on the Facebook page, that every time something posts, we're fraudulent crooks running up bills for insurance companies and making premium too expensive for customers to afford. Um, just recently, within the last couple of years, there's been a lot of attention on one, internal fraud. So that's employees within the claims department, and two, what agencies and brokers and whatever are doing. It is the largest fraud cost. So there's real fraud. There's fake injuries and chiropractors. There's body shops that enhance damage. That stuff exists. But the injury stuff and then the internal fraud is by far the larger category. So when we think about how fraud affects insurance premiums, don't let people tell you that it's body shops that are running up the whole thing. I remember one year looking at one of my last years as I was leaving, look at it and looking at some of the SIU findings. And there was internal investigations. Like I had more cases open against employees than we had against body shops. But at the end of that year, the internal fraud, whether that was adjusters creating fake companies to write checks to for towing or reports or whatever, like everybody thinks they've come up with a scam that's never existed before. And typically we didn't really ever catch you on our own. You pissed off your spouse or during a divorce and then they called and turned you in. So that's how we caught you. But but or you didn't do a share with the person you were supposed to share with and you weren't, sharing the money. So then they called and turned you in. But that line was always bigger than my body shop fraud line. So don't let people convince you. I think I'm going to keep sharing these stories as long as the insurer wants to perpetuate the negative criminal narrative around body shops. I'll just turn around and keep sharing more about them. All right, let's talk about what's going on this week, and we'll get you out of here and get you going. This week, our C20 marketing group meets. That's Tom Zoblin. Basically, every week, our virtual 20 groups, we call them our C20 groups. They're different topics. So it's not like you're always going to the same 20 group where you're going over financials. I don't want to do your financials. That's stupid. We just want to train you. That's all we want to do. So we have marketing groups, we have estimating groups, we have financial groups, we have all these different, but just about every week there's some sort of training going on. This week, Thursday, Tom's going to be in the marketing group, which I think is super important. It's why I'm going to start talking about. Shops are going to have to hunt and eat what you kill. You're not going to be able to just open your doors and have work come to you anymore. You're going to have to go find it. You're going to have to spend a lot of time on marketing, advertising, lead generation, lead closure. Like there's so little fish in the pond. You're going to have to make sure that you're out there dragging, hunting, push pulling, putting anything in the shop you can. All right, to do that, I asked Tom to create things to help shops because you don't have time to spend hours a day on your marketing. And some of us, we don't even have the background to even know where to start, even if we had the time. And then we definitely don't have the budget to hire an advertising agency or a marketing agency to do it for us. So Tom's been building a lot of AI driven tools to help shops like get a jump start. And so in this class, he's got a market tool. We call it Market Planner. You enter zip codes in which you want to target. So if you're sitting here in my town, I'm 72019, I believe. I would look at the demographics and go, you know what? That particular area is probably newer cars. They're probably financed, which means they're going to have insurance on them. And so I want to target those zip codes with my marketing. So you enter the zip codes you want to target, and it will automatically do the research for you. So you're going to get your demographics, income levels, and then it's going to tell you what marketing channels you should prioritize. It'll suggest some budgets for you to target those channels. And then it helps generate all your ad copy. So if you're like, I don't even know what to write, what would I post? What would I do? This AI tool goes and looks at what's being successful in those zip codes from other people and then helps you write copy. So you can just copy and paste it in that way. Tom's working really hard to make it as easy as possible. He's got an AI tool for SEO. So you don't have to pay somebody $500 a month to do your search engine optimization for your shop's websites and socials. Like, boom, here's a tool for that. I asked him to do whatever he could to make independent mom and pop shops survive, help them hunt. And Tom has been working very, very hard on that. And so he's going to go over the first AI tool that's there and show you how that works. Next week, We've also got Larry's estimating class. We've got Rachel's financial class. My insurance and customer relations class will be our topic is argue like a lawyer, think like a judge. I love this topic. I've been teaching this one for 20 something years. I had to go back. Um, but the premise of it is every every argument has a position. That position comes from the selected facts. Like there, you pick and choose the facts you want that best support the narrative of what you want to do. That's what a good lawyer does, right? I have to defend somebody that may even be guilty, right? So how do we become a strategic advocate? And I think that's really, really critical right now for shops that you learn how to be a strategic advocate, not just an advocate. We fight for you, we work for you, not the insurance company. That's a generic bullshit. Like, how do we get you narrowed down to be a strategic advocate? And then how do you learn how to build your argument? And that doesn't mean that you just dump your argument on everybody on day one, but how do you learn to build that argument? And then how do you deliver it? And then once I've chosen my facts, the think like a judge thing, and I always say the judge is your audience, whoever that is. Like in court, it's a judge, right? In our life, it's either an insurance person or it's the customer. So now that I've got an argument, I'm going to need to present it, but I need to think about how that audience or the judge receives my argument. What do they have to do? So, as a lawyer, I've worked from one set of principles. As a judge, you work from another set of principles. And so we'll talk about how arguments are evaluated, how different areas and aspects of arguments are weighed, and then what actually sort of goes into that judgment or making that final decision, what a judge does. Really, really good class. There's a lot of workbooks and supportive things that are going to come with this class with the playback because it's like you're going to sit in on my lecture, and it'll be like an hour and a half, 2 hours long. And then you're like, okay, she said a lot, but what I do? So then we'll deliver you the paperwork, the homework, so to speak, afterwards for you to go through it. But it's more on critical thinking. But I used to teach adjusters that your job was to argue like a lawyer and think like a judge. I can't wait until we're sued to hand your file to our outside counsel and go defend it. They only can work with whatever you started with. So if you started wrong, we're screwed, we're settling it. If you started bad and eventually sort of got the train right, we're settling it, but probably for less. But if we're going to go all the way through and defend something even through court, that doesn't start with the attorney I hire. That starts with the adjuster that first opened the claim, took the first recorded statement, did the first phone call, wrote the first estimate. All of that starts then. And I think for shops, our ability to get to the end and get paid starts when you open the file. And if you think, when you're first writing the RO number on the windshield, if you begin to think and how and what it would take to build the best advocate position to argue in front of a judge, it changes the way you look at everything. So we're going to break that down in detail. Really excited. I'm going to bring out a lot of classes this year that are actually old insurance classes. We're just going to flip the script on them and we're going to teach you the same things the adjusters learned all these years. The argue like a lawyer, think like a judge class. I taught that to coverage investigating adjusters. I taught that to the BI injury teams, and I taught that to the SIU teams. So that was a fun class, and I like that one. So it makes me excited to deliver those. I'm going back into the claims roots this year. Most everything I'll be talking about is from a claims perspective, claims training, claims purpose and intent. And I think that if we do that, we can switch that, sort of flip it, and it'll translate really, really well. If you have questions, comments, concerns, Melanie's your girl this week. If you want to attend, if you're not a member of any of our C20 groups and you want to sign up just for Tom's class, or you want to come join us for the Argue Like a Lawyer, Think Like a Judge class, you can also talk to Melanie about those. And then we have a membership where you can attend every one of the C20 meetings every month and get the playbacks. I always tell people the playbacks, man, that's gold. That's yours. Once the class is delivered and you get the playback, you own it. Like you forever get to watch that show anytime you want it. So it's not just like you sit in, listen to me ramble for like, an hour and a half, and then you have to remember everything. So we want you to have those playbacks. It's great to show to new hires. It's great to make them lunch and learns a lot of times. So we have a lot of owners that sit through those. But you can't just sit back and wait for somebody to fix it for you. I made a post, no one's coming to steal your troubles, or your obstacles. there's no default anymore. You can't just sit back and go, well, whatever the insurance company's willing to pay, I'm willing to do. You're gonna have to learn how to fight this year because it's that or close. We really are there. It's either learn how to hunt and eat what you kill, or close your doors. And that's going to be hard shifting of values. And I watched a lot of people as farmers have started to close their DRP, even the farmers adjusters that got fired. So a lot of farmers people got laid off in the last 3 weeks, that were running those programs that are now gone, field adjusters, DRP managers, etc. Um, the there's a shift and it's going to be hard. It's like learning the world isn't flat. If you think, people, we went from earth is flat to no, it's round. There's so many people that have been so dependent on that constant Novocaine drip of DRP. And I'm going to be a good partner and I'm going to learn to get along with insurance companies and all that. And that rug's being ripped out under their feet through no fault of their own. They were excellent, uh, preferred partners for a long time, but now that's disappearing. So they're going to be under a lot of stress. As always, if you have any other questions, Melanie, please do not send me direct messages on any of the social medias. There's too many that come in there and I lose track. And then I feel bad when I don't answer somebody because I lost track of it. And then I'm going to run into these people at some trade show somewhere and they're going to be like, you never responded to me. And I'm going to be like, I completely lost track. I'm not shutting down my messaging because like family actually messages me on there, and so I'm just gonna say, please do not message me on social media. Send those to Melanie. Melanie and Holly handle those to make sure we don't lose track of anybody. So I will see you next week on Collision Coffee Talk. Bye, everybody.